Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. So today we're diving into a massive, honestly kind of mind-blowing, data-backed plot twist regarding artificial intelligence and the future of your job. Look, if you've been following the news at all lately, you know the narrative around AI is usually filled with a whole lot of doom and gloom. But what if the data tells a completely different story? What if instead of making humans obsolete, algorithms are actually increasing human value? Well, that is exactly what we're unpacking today.
It's the question literally everyone is asking right now. Is AI coming for your job? And let's just validate that anxiety for a second, because it's completely rational to look at tools like machine learning, natural language processing, computer vision, and worry about widespread job destruction. I mean, nobody wants to be replaced by a piece of software that doesn't even need a coffee break, right? We see the headlines every single day about algorithms automating human roles. But what if all of that fear is actually rooted in a totally flawed way of looking at the economy?
Okay, let's dive into this. Society has been obsessing over the wrong metric entirely. We've been hyper-focused on headcount, looking purely at job creation versus job destruction. But a truly fascinating shift in perspective happens when we start looking at the right metric, human value, or more specifically, the labor income share. The true measure of AI's impact isn't just about how many bodies are sitting in the office. It's about how the economic value generated by an organization is actually distributed to those people.
Now, to prove this isn't just some pie-in-the-sky theory, we're looking at a landmark 2026 study published in the Journal of Business Research. The researchers analyzed a massive, and I mean massive, dataset of 11,551 Chinese-listed firms over a really pivotal period. They looked at data from 2016, which, if you remember, is the year Google's AlphaGo defeated the world champion Go player, right through to 2022. So what we have here is hard, empirical economic data on exactly how AI adoption affects organizations on the ground.
Before we hit the big reveal, we really need to understand our core metric for today: labor income share. Basically, this is the proportion of total firm income allocated to human labor in the form of wages, salaries, and benefits. Think of it as the ultimate measure of how a company values its human workforce compared to other factors of production, like capital or the technology itself. If AI truly devalues human work, well, we'd expect to see this share absolutely plummet as algorithms take over.
But the data reveals the exact opposite. Get this, the researchers found a massive 11.2% increase in labor share of income associated with high AI adoption. I mean, really let that sink in for a second. Organizations that heavily adopted AI didn't squeeze their workers' share of the pie, they actually expanded it by 11.2%. This finding completely shatters the myth that artificial intelligence fundamentally diminishes human value. Instead, it seems to elevate it.
So how does this actually play out in practice? How do we get to this 11.2% boost? Well, the researchers identify a mechanism they call task reassignment. It works like this. Step 1. AI steps in and automates all those routine tasks. Think endless spreadsheet formatting or basic repetitive computations. Step 2. Because humans are freed from the grunt work, they pivot to high-value problem-solving, strategic thinking, and complex interpersonal interactions. And step 3, because employees are now doing much more unique, irreplaceable work, their contributions unlock greater value for the firm, and they're ultimately rewarded with a higher share of the income.
But hold on, this brings us to a really provocative question. A rising tide doesn't always lift all boats equally, right? When we see this 11.2% increase in the labor income share, who's actually getting that money? Is it just the top executives padding their year-end bonuses, or are the rank-and-file workers actually seeing the benefits too?
To answer that, the researchers looked at another crucial metric, the TMT employee pay gap. Now, TMT simply stands for Top Management Team. This metric measures the stark difference in compensation between those top executives sitting in the C-suite and the average everyday employee working within the firm. It is pretty much the ultimate indicator of internal corporate inequality. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is where AI acts as a massive equalizer. The data reveals a 7.8% drop in the TMT employee pay gap caused by AI adoption. So not only is the total pie for human labor growing, but the way that pie is sliced is becoming way more equitable. The gap between the CEO and the average worker literally shrinks when a firm heavily integrates artificial intelligence.
And this brilliantly illustrates a concept the researchers call decision redistribution. Traditionally, executives basically held a monopoly on complex judgments because they had the experience and the high-level overview. But AI dilutes that monopolistic power.
By giving average employees access to really powerful data insights and predictive algorithms, those workers are transformed into strategic orchestrators. They don't necessarily need decades of executive intuition anymore. They have AI-backed intelligence right at their fingertips. As their decision-making power increases, their value increases, which flattens out that pay gap.
All right, moving on to the next part of our explainer, the hidden catch: conditions apply.
Now, at this point, I know it sounds like an absolute utopia. Higher wages, more strategic work, less inequality. It sounds great. But this positive outcome isn't just automatic the second you buy an AI software license. There is a catch. The research has found this financial boost requires two very strict organizational conditions. The first is high employee capability. Just take a look at this contrast. In firms with a highly educated, capable workforce, AI drove an 11.8% boost in the labor income share. But in firms with low employee capability, the impact was completely negligible. Why? Because to capture the value of AI, humans absolutely must have the education and the critical thinking skills to interpret all this complex data. If the workforce can't pivot to high-value problem-solving when the routine tasks are automated, those financial benefits simply vanish.
The second big condition revolves around leadership, specifically what's called TMT tenure. This just refers to how long the top management team has served in their roles. Long tenure is very closely linked to entrenched habits, stubborn decision-making routines, and overall organizational inertia. And as it turns out, long-serving, maybe slightly stubborn leadership can act as a massive roadblock to unlocking AI's benefits for the broader workforce.
When leadership has a short tenure, they tend to be way more flexible and open to letting employees actually use AI for decision-making. But when TMT tenure is long, those executives can be pretty rigid. They rely heavily on their gut feeling and established routines. They might even actively discourage employees from using AI insights if those insights challenge their traditional methods. And the data shows this. Entrenched leadership actively suppresses the financial gains, limiting the reduction in the pay gap to just 6.8% instead of hitting its full potential. So, the crucial point here is that AI is a tool, not a magic wand. How do organizations and workers actually win with AI? Well, the takeaways are incredibly clear. First, you absolutely have to invest in comprehensive AI training. The workforce needs the actual capability to use these tools. Second, establish AI-assisted mentorship to help employees continuously level up their skills. Third, companies really need to avoid panic-driven workforce reductions and focus instead on strategic redeployment. And finally, you have to break down those entrenched leadership routines so that hard data can finally win over outdated gut feelings. As you've seen today, the hard data tells a story of empowerment, not replacement. AI has the proven potential to increase human value, elevate labor's share of income, and flatten corporate inequality, but only if we have the right skills and the right leadership in place. So I want to leave you with this final, empowering question to think about. Will you let AI replace you, or will you use it to get a raise? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope it changes the way you think about the future of your work. See you next time.